Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
Thanksgiving, 2024. I stood on the porch of my in-laws' oversized beige colonial in Westchester, holding a bottle of $300 Napa Cabernet in one hand and my 6-year-old son Dean's hand in the other. My fingers were already cold. His were shaking. I didn't want to be here. But for him, I showed up. My ex, Lexi, bailed right after Dean was born. 1 week home from the hospital and she was gone. No note, no call, nothing. Her whole family just kind of folded around that. Nobody's seen her since, not even her parents. They blamed me, of course. Said I drove her away, that I trapped her. But they let us come around for holidays. Barely. Like they were doing me a favor. We stepped inside. House smelled like butter and judgment. Sharon, my former mother-in-law, gave Dean a stiff hug and got his name wrong. Again. "Hi, Danny." "It's Dean," I muttered. She didn't hear me, or pretended not to. Quick note. Before we start, share in the comments. How's your day going and where are you joining from? And let's continue. I handed over the wine, got a side eye from Paul, the father-in-law, who made this snorting sound like he was choking on his own smugness. "Look who finally found time to crawl out of his basement," he said, loud enough for the whole damn dining room to hear. Then he smirked like he'd just landed the joke of the century. "Good to see you too, Paul." He clapped me on the shoulder, hard, and leaned in. "Hope you didn't bring one of those boxed wines again. Sharon's got standards." "It's from Napa," I said. 300 retail." His face twitched. He didn't expect that. But of course he still found a way to act superior. "Huh. Well, must have stolen it off the delivery truck." That was Paul, a walking cigar stain. Always thought he was the alpha in every room. Even when his 401k tanked and I secretly paid off his mortgage. He didn't know that, of course. None of them did. I kept it quiet. For Dean. Dinner started off tense but manageable. Dean sat beside me, proud in his little button-down shirt I'd ironed myself. I watched him try to butter a roll without destroying it. Kid had more dignity in his tiny hands than anyone else at that table. I brought gifts, not just the wine. Toys for the cousins, a new Kindle for Sharon, a Yeti cooler for Curtis. Thought maybe this year they'd look at Dean like he actually belonged. But nah. They stuck us at the far end of the table like we were the out-of-town cousins they barely knew. Curtis gave some half-assed toast about those who really hold this family up. Everyone clinked glasses. Nobody looked our way. Then mid-dinner, Paul dropped it, loud and clear between bites of turkey and stuffing. "You know, some people just keep dragging the family down. Dead weight, a real burden." The table went silent. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Dean looked up at me, his eyes confused, scared. "You talking about me?" I asked, voice low. Paul shrugged, but his eyes were locked on mine. "If the shoe fits, Eric." I felt Dean's little hand slip into mine under the table. His lip trembled. I didn't say a word, didn't raise my voice, didn't try to defend myself. I stood up, pulled Dean's coat from the back of his chair, helped him into it while everyone stared. "Where are you going?" Sharon asked, sounding more annoyed than concerned. "Home," I said. "Happy Thanksgiving." Dean was crying before we even got to the car. I buckled him in and sat there with my hands on the wheel, heart pounding. They thought I was still some barely getting by IT guy with a used truck and a shoebox apartment. But what they didn't know was that I sold my startup last year for $18 million, paid their bills, saved their asses, and they still treated us like stray dogs. I wasn't going to let that slide. Not anymore. I wasn't always the guy in the driver's seat. Back in college, I was just another broke commuter kid from upstate, backpack full of thrift store books, trying to keep my laptop from overheating while I coded in the library until they kicked me out. And then I met Lexi. She was this electric storm in a red leather jacket, bright green eyes, endless sarcasm, and a walk that dared you to keep up. She was always rushing, late to class, late to work, late to whatever came next. But when she was with you, she was all in, until she wasn't. We hooked up fast, fell harder. She called it fireworks without the fuse, whatever that meant. I called it chaos. I knew she had baggage, family pressure, some weird thing with her mom, unresolved resentment toward her dad who dipped out years ago. But I thought if I stayed steady, I could handle it. She got pregnant 6 months in. We were 20. In the last month, she stayed mostly at her mom's place to get some space. I told myself it was temporary. She carried to term. At the hospital, I signed what they put in front of me and added my name to the birth certificate. We brought Dean home to my apartment, and for a week she was a ghost. Quiet, distant, barely holding him. Then one morning she was gone. No call, no note, nothing. At first I thought she was just hiding out at Sharon's place in White Plains. I drove there, knocked on the door like a damn fool. Sharon opened it halfway and looked at me like I was an animal that wandered up from the road. "She doesn't want to see you," she said. "We just brought a newborn home," I said. She crossed her arms. "You should have thought of that before trapping her." "I didn't trap anybody. We were—" "Don't come back here, Eric. This is a family matter now." I remember standing on that porch, feeling like the floor dropped out under my feet. That was the first time I realized they weren't ever going to see me as anything but the mistake Lexi made. I moved off campus, rented a one-bedroom over a Chinese takeout place. Every night smelled like sesame oil and grease. Dean slept in a pack-and-play next to my bed. I studied with him on my chest and typed code with one hand while feeding him formula at 2 a.m., half asleep but still typing. Got good at doing 3 things at once: coding, burping, and holding back tears when nobody was watching. Freelanced for anyone who'd pay. Medical record encryption, e-commerce patches. Wrote back-end architecture for sketchy crypto wallets. I drank cold coffee out of mason jars and scoured Craigslist for used monitors. Ate whatever was 2 for 1 at the gas station. Sharon and Curtis only showed up when they needed something. Once when Sharon got hit with a surprise medical bill. Once when Curtis forgot to pay tuition and needed someone to co-sign a quick loan. They didn't check in on Dean. Didn't ask if we were okay. Just assumed I'd say yes because I had nothing better to do. Everyone else? They looked at me like a walking cautionary tale. Poor Eric, raising that kid on his own, probably barely scraping by. I let them believe it. Easier that way. Nobody asks questions when they think you're pathetic. But the truth was, under all that stress and sleep deprivation, something was growing. I started sketching out an idea between freelance gigs, an encrypted file sharing system that would leave no digital footprint. Private by design. Secure enough for hospitals, tight enough for lawyers, simple enough for the average user. I called it Quiet Send. I worked on it after midnight, hunched over the sticky kitchen counter, drinking tap water and coding while Dean snored 2 feet away. My neighbors must have thought I was losing it, talking to myself, pacing with a whiteboard I'd stolen from campus. Took 2 years to get the first build stable. Another year to get a tiny group of clients through a friend of a friend investor. By year 4, I had 5 employees, all remote. I was still living in that one bedroom, still driving a 10-year-old Tacoma with a cracked windshield. But my servers were humming, my pipeline was growing, and venture capitalists started circling like vultures with briefcases. Year 5, I sold. 8-figure deal. After taxes and equity rollovers, I cleared $18.2 million. I didn't tell a soul. Not Sharon, not Curtis, not a single person who ever looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of their shoe. I let them keep thinking I was drowning in bills and bad decisions. Still wore my beat-up hoodies. Still drove the Tacoma. Never even upgraded my phone. You know why? Because the moment they knew I had money, they'd act like they were part of the journey, like they'd always believed in me, like I owed them something. Nah, they didn't get that privilege. So I stayed quiet. Let them whisper. Let them smirk. Let them talk down to me every damn Thanksgiving like I should be grateful just to share a folding chair, Fine. I played the broke loser in their little family drama. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't doing it for them. I was building something way bigger. I didn't need them to clap for me. I just needed them to stop pretending I didn't exist. After I sold Quiet Send, I took maybe 2 weeks to breathe before reality started closing in again. This time, it wasn't my bills that were due. It was theirs. Paul's retirement fund tanked during the 2020 crash. I overheard it at a 4th of July barbecue. He was red-faced, drinking bourbon, ranting to some other old guy about how the goddamn market gutted us. He was scared, though he'd never admit it. Said they might lose the house if the bottom falls out again. That same night, I went home, set up a shell LLC, and made the mortgage payments disappear. They thought the bank adjusted their terms. Sharon called it a Christmas miracle. No, Sharon. That was me. Curtis came next. He'd started this janky lifestyle brand right before the pandemic. Cheap supplements, overpriced gym hoodies, a podcast nobody listened to. The first check bounced, then the second. I stepped in, anonymously, through a so-called angel investment firm I owned on paper, paid off his supplier debt, leased him a new storefront, even floated him inventory costs for 6 months. He bragged at Thanksgiving that year, told everyone he'd finally gotten a real investor on the hook. Yeah, dipshit. That was me too. Then there was Mia, my niece. Sharon mentioned one afternoon, like it was nothing, that the tuition for Mia's school had doubled, and the scholarship fund she applied for came through last minute. That scholarship didn't exist until I created it. I wrote the checks, disguised the program under a fake nonprofit, and gave it a name so generic nobody would trace it. None of them ever asked where the help came from. It just showed up and got taken for granted. Like me, I kept score, not in a petty way. But I remembered every moment that reminded me who I was in their eyes. Like when Sharon called Dean Derrick twice in the same visit. Or when Curtis told me I should look into trade schools since IT jobs were drying up. Or when Paul made one of his classics. You know, Eric, here's proof you don't need money to be proud of your work ethic. I had more in my checking account than his entire retirement portfolio. But sure, Paul, keep the jokes coming. It wasn't about the money. If it were, I'd have let them sink. But I did it all because of Dean. The kid needed some kind of extended family, even if it was made of plastic, even if every hug was stiff and every invite came with invisible terms. I wanted him to believe there were people in the world who cared, even if they didn't know how to show it. So I kept showing up, quietly, letting them think I was the broke IT guy with a soft spot and a thick skull. And I thought maybe this year, just maybe, it'd be different. Thanksgiving morning, I got Dean dressed in his nicest button-down, brushed his hair flat, even though it popped right back up. He held the bag of gifts like it was treasure. Yankees hat for Paul, a silk scarf for Sharon, a stack of signed first editions I tracked down for Curtis. We brought wine, again, toys for the cousins, a new Lego set for Mia. We pulled up. Sharon waved from the porch, barely smiled. Paul didn't even get up from the recliner. We were there, but we weren't seen. When it came time for dinner, they set 2 extra folding chairs at the far end of the table, like we were the neighbors' guests. I watched Dean look down the length of the table, trying to figure out why we weren't with everyone else. He didn't say anything, just sat quietly and picked at his napkin. Dinner was dry turkey and fake laughter. Sharon complained about entitled parents at Mia's school. Curtis talked about the podcast sponsorships that might land by Q2. Paul went on about inflation and lazy people gaming the system. Then Curtis stood up to make a toast, raised his glass, smug as hell. To everyone here who really contributes to this family, the ones who lift us up, keep things going, and never quit. Everyone clapped, everyone but me. I looked down at Dean, who was smiling, clueless, and I nearly laughed. Almost. It bubbled in my throat like a cough, because I'd been the one lifting them up for years, quietly, patiently, invisibly. And in that moment, with a plate of cold green beans in front of me, I wanted to stand up and spell it all out. But I didn't, because Dean was watching me. So I nodded like I agreed, took a sip of wine, and swallowed the whole damn thing. Dean was just trying to help. That's what gutted me most. Sharon had brought out some stupid glass tray with those soggy green bean things she loves to ruin every year. She set it near the edge of the side table behind me while I was helping Dean open a juice box. He turned to grab a napkin, bumped it with his elbow, and down it went. Glass and beans everywhere. It wasn't even 2 seconds before Sharon screamed like someone had set the house on fire. "Oh my God, that was my mother's! What is wrong with him?" Dean froze, his face drained. He looked up at me like he was waiting for punishment, like he already thought he deserved it. Before I could even move, Curtis jumped in. "You've got to watch your kid, man. This isn't daycare." "He's 6, I said, trying to stay calm. "It was an accident." Paul slammed his hand on the table hard enough to rattle the dishes. Number enough. He stood up, chest puffed out like he was getting ready for a bar fight. "You come in here every year acting like you belong, eating our food, sitting at our table, parading that poor kid around like we owe you something." My jaw clenched. Dean was still staring at the floor, holding the empty juice box like it was a weapon. "You're a damn disgrace," Paul barked, "still sucking air off this family like we're supposed to carry your dead weight." No one stopped him. No one said a word. Dean looked up at me, his eyes wide, glossy. That was it. I stood up, slow and controlled, walked to the hallway, grabbed our coats from the rack, came back, and crouched next to Dean. "Put your arms up, bud," I said quietly. He didn't speak, just lifted his arms like he used to when he was 3 and tired of walking. I zipped him up, swung my coat over one arm, and picked him up. "Eric," Sharon started, but I didn't give her the space. I walked straight out the front door, Dean clinging to my shoulder, his tiny hands curled into the back of my sweater. The screen door slapped shut behind us. Nobody followed. Outside, the air was cold and smelled like dead leaves. My breath came out shaky. Dean was quiet until we got to the car. "Why's Grandpa mad at us?" he asked. I buckled him in and sat there for a second. My fingers were tight on the steering wheel, blood thumping in my ears like a war drum. "He's just wrong," I said. "He's wrong about everything." We drove in silence. I didn't know where we were going, just knew I couldn't take him back to that little apartment tonight. Not after that. Not after the way they looked at him like he was nothing. 10 minutes later, I pulled into a high-rise hotel downtown. No plans, no bags. Just walked in with my wallet and my son and booked the best suite they had. Didn't blink at the rate. We went upstairs. I let Dean pick whatever he wanted from room service. He chose steak, mashed potatoes, and strawberry ice cream. I told him it was a good call. He smiled, barely, but it was there. We curled up on the king bed with a stack of pillows and watched a movie. I didn't even know what it was. Some cartoon with talking cars or robots or both. He laughed once, just a little giggle when one of them fell in a puddle. I held on to that sound like it was oxygen. He fell asleep with his head on my chest. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling while everything snapped into place. I wasn't going to protect these people anymore. Not with my money, not with my silence, not with my time. They didn't deserve it. They never had. And Dean, he deserved better than their scraps. Next morning I called Allison, my assistant. She picked up on the first ring. "I need you to do 3 things," I said. 1. Freeze all payments from Walker Family Holdings. Mortgage, tuition, Curtis's brand, everything. 2. Start dissolving the shell companies. I want it all shut down, clean and quiet. 3. Prep the Naples property. We're relocating. There was a pause. "You're sure?" she asked. "The Florida house?" "Yeah. I'm done pretending." "Got it. I'll handle it." I hung up, stepped out onto the balcony, and looked down at the city. It was already noisy, buzzing with traffic and people rushing around trying to get somewhere. I wasn't rushing anymore. Dean came out a few minutes later, rubbing his eyes. "Where are we going?" he asked. I crouched down, looked him in the face. Somewhere sunny, I said. With a pool. He smiled for real that time. By the time we landed in Naples, the calls had already started. Curtis was first. Of course he was. Monday morning, I was sitting at a beachfront cafe with Dean across from me, eating pancakes shaped like dolphins. My phone buzzed, and I let it ring twice before picking up. "Hey man," he started, way too casual for someone in a tailspin. "You hear anything from that investor group? Mine just pulled out. No warning. Whole deal fell apart overnight." I sipped my coffee and looked out at the water. "That sucks." "Yeah, it's bad, bro. I mean, they were keeping us above water. You think they heard something? Maybe one of the holding firms talked to them?" I shrugged, even though he couldn't see it. "Not sure. Hope you figure it out." He paused, probably trying to figure out what planet I was on. "Okay. Well, let me know if you hear anything." I didn't respond. Just hung up. Next day, Sharon called. Twice. Left a voicemail after the second one. "Eric, I don't know what's going on, but the scholarship office emailed this morning saying Mia's tuition is due immediately, and they're not renewing assistance. This has to be a mistake. Can you please call me?" Nope. No mistake. Just the end of free rides. I waited 2 days, then texted her. "Hope you're able to sort it out. Best of luck." Didn't even sign it. She replied with a single line. "Is this about Thanksgiving?" I didn't answer. She never followed up. Then came Paul. I was in the middle of unpacking our boxes when he called. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me he'd hit the boiling point. I wanted to hear it. "Eric. Paul. We got a notice today. Foreclosure. Bank says they haven't received a payment in 60 days. I didn't say anything. Just let the silence stretch. "You know anything about this?" he asked, tone sharp. "Nope," I said. "Haven't been involved in your finances for a while now." There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, like he was about to say something meaningful. Then, true to form, he defaulted to rage. "This some kind of stunt? You think hurting my family is going to make you look better? I think it's long past time your family stood on its own." Then I hung up. They were unraveling and had no clue why. Because I'd always been the guy in the shadows, plugging the leaks, patching the holes. They never saw it happen. So now, when the boat started sinking, they didn't even know where the water was coming from. Curtis called again later that week. This time, he wasn't pretending to be chill. "Man, please," he said, almost whispering. "I'm not gonna lie, I'm screwed. Rent's overdue, suppliers are cutting me off, and now I gotta let my manager go." "Sounds like the business is on the edge," I said. "Yeah, exactly. That's what I've been saying. Maybe it's time to get a job, Curtis. Like a real one." There was a long pause, like I'd punched him in the gut. "You serious right now?" Dead serious. He didn't call back after that. I wasn't trying to be cruel, but I wasn't going to be the invisible safety net anymore. They spent years looking down on me, like I was some lucky barnacle clinging to the bottom of their ship. But I was the damn keel, the only thing keeping them upright. And they never saw it. Not once. Every Thanksgiving, I sat through Curtis's smug toasts and Sharon's tight smiles. I smiled back, let Paul slap me on the back and make his little jabs. Meanwhile, their lives were being held together by the guy they thought was beneath them. Now, they could figure out what it felt like to fall. Dean didn't know any of this. I kept him out of it. Told him we were just starting a new chapter, closer to the beach, closer to fun. And it wasn't a lie. That first week in Naples, we explored the boardwalk, rode bikes near the water, and watched pelicans dive-bomb the shore like they owned the place. He slept better. I did too. I kept my phone on, but only because I wanted to hear how far they'd go. I wanted to see how long it would take before someone stopped blaming me and started asking why they were collapsing. It didn't happen. They kept grasping in the dark, like I was a ghost who cursed them, not the one who'd been keeping their lights on. But here's the thing about ghosts. Once they're gone, they don't owe you anything. The house in Naples sat on a quiet corner lot behind iron gates and swaying palm trees. Spanish tile roof, big windows, backyard pool, walkable to the beach, and 10 minutes from the best school I could find. Dean walked in like he didn't believe it was real. He kept stopping in each room, just staring like he was waiting for someone to tell him we had to leave. First thing he did was cannonball into the pool fully clothed, laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. I didn't stop him. I let him have that moment. That night, I sat him down at the kitchen island. Granite counters, high stools, built-in wine fridge, and told him the truth. Not all of it, but the part he needed. "Listen, bud," I said. "I know we used to live real simple, but I want you to understand something. We're not poor. We haven't been for a while." His head tilted, curious. "We're not?" "Nope. I just didn't tell anybody." "Why?" "Because I didn't want people treating us different. But now, we don't need to act like we're struggling anymore. We're okay. You're okay." He blinked, then smiled slow. "So, you're like, the boss?" I laughed. "Something like that, kid." Next morning, we toured his new school, small classes, bright walls, teachers who actually gave a damn. I paid up front for the year. He walked in shy and quiet, but by day 3, he was jumping into a pickup soccer game like he'd always belonged. I set up a second office in a co-working space downtown, sleek, modern, half full of retired execs pretending they were still working. But it gave me room to breathe and a reason to keep building. I started sketching out my next project, a scholarship foundation for single dads rebuilding from scratch. Something real, something personal. I called it Third Shift, because that's what it felt like, being dad, worker, and survivalist all at once. I met guys there, real guys, some younger, some older, veterans, divorcees, solo foster dads. Nobody asked where I came from. Nobody cared about the past. We talked about what mattered, raising kids, building futures, not losing your damn mind in the process. It felt like breathing fresh air after living underwater. Dean stopped having those nightmares, the ones where he'd wake up yelling or crawl into my bed shaking. They just faded. He slept through the night, started drawing again, started humming in the car like he used to when he was little. I stopped checking my phone every morning waiting for a missed call or some guilt-trap voicemail. The walkers went quiet. For weeks, there was nothing, and I didn't miss it. But then, 5 days before Christmas, Sharon called. Her name popped up while I was helping Dean wrap presents for his teacher. I almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail again. But something told me to hear her out. I stepped out onto the patio, flipped open the phone, and answered with one word. "Yeah?" She sounded tired. Not just physically, like something in her had broken and hadn't fully healed. "Eric," she said, I'm sorry to call. I wasn't sure if I should, but I wanted to ask something." "Go ahead." "I'd like to come visit. Just me. Not Paul. Just to see Dean. No drama, no guilt, just a visit." There was a pause. I let her sit in it. She didn't fill it with excuses or fake cheer. "I'm not asking to stay," she added. "You can set the rules. I just miss my grandson." That hit a spot I didn't expect. I didn't say yes right away. I didn't say no either. "All right," I finally said. "You can come. But I swear to God, Sharon, if you come down here and try to play the same game you always played, it ends right there." "I understand. Dean doesn't owe you comfort. You show up, you sit with him, you respect the space. No more calling him Danny or pretending I owe you anything." Her voice cracked a little. "You're right. I won't." "All right. I'll text you the address." I hung up, walked back inside. Dean was sticking red tape on a crooked wrapping job. "Who was that?" he asked. "Grandma Sharon," I said. "She wants to visit." "Are we going to let her?" "Yeah, one visit. Let's see if she means it." He nodded like it was no big deal. But I could tell he felt something. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about seeing if someone who never showed up could actually change. And honestly, I wanted to see it too. She showed up on a Thursday afternoon, 2 days before Christmas. Dean was in the backyard building a sand igloo. Yes, sand. While I stood in the driveway, arms crossed, watching Sharon's Uber crawl up to the curb like it was scared of the house. She stepped out slower than I expected. No makeup, loose cardigan, oversized sunglasses that didn't hide much. Her eyes were puffy, her jaw tight. She looked older, smaller. I didn't move. She walked up the path holding a tote bag like she was going door to door selling apologies. "Hi, Eric," she said. "Rules still apply," I said. "No guilt, no lectures, no lies." I remember. I opened the front door and let her in. She stood in the entryway like it might bite her. Her eyes went everywhere. High ceilings, open floor plan, wall-to-wall windows facing the pool. Her jaw twitched. She didn't speak. Dean came running in barefoot, holding a half-built plastic snowman. "Grandma?" he asked. She smiled, small and stiff. "Hi, sweetheart." He didn't run to her, just waved, unsure. Then he went back outside without a word. Sharon sighed. "He's bigger." "Yeah. He's also smarter than most adults in this family." She didn't respond. Just followed me through the kitchen and out to the pool. I poured her a glass of water, sat down across from her at the patio table, and waited. She stared out at the backyard like she was trying to place herself in it. Like the palm trees, the lawn, the quiet. None of it made sense. "This is beautiful," she finally said. I didn't answer. "You did all this?" "Yeah." She looked down at her hands. The silence sat between us, heavy and awkward. "I didn't know," she said. "That's the point," I said. "You never asked. I thought you were just struggling, barely getting by. I mean, you always showed up looking like someone you didn't have to respect." She winced. I leaned back in my chair. "You ever wonder why the bank didn't take your house in 2020? Why Mia's tuition kept getting covered? Why Curtis's business limped along for 3 years without making a dollar?" Her face went pale. "You think all that just happened?" "I didn't. Eric, I swear I didn't know." "No," I said. "You didn't want to know. You looked at me and saw a burden, a failure. You were so busy rewriting the story of what happened with Lexi that you never bothered to see what was in front of you." She blinked fast. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then she stood up and walked over to the edge of the pool. Her arms crossed tight, like she was holding herself together with force. "I thought I was protecting her," she said quietly. "When she left, I thought you pushed her too hard, that you were dragging her down. You don't get to blame me for Lexi ghosting her own kid. I'm not." She turned around, eyes wet now. "I swear I'm not. When she disappeared, I didn't know what to do. I hated you because hating you was easier than admitting I lost my daughter." I didn't speak. The wind rustled the palm leaves overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a golf cart buzzed past. Sharon wiped her face with her sleeve. "I wasn't fair to you. Not once. And I didn't deserve to see him today, but thank you for letting me." I looked over to where Dean was sitting in the sand with his little shovel, humming to himself while he built some lopsided tower. "I didn't do it for you." "I know." She came back to the table, sat down slow. Her hands were shaking. "I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, or at all. I just needed to say it. To your face." I stared at her. For the first time in forever, she wasn't putting on that perfect mother act. No fake voice, no passive-aggressive lines, just a woman who looked like she'd been cracked wide open. The apology wasn't perfect, but it was real. Dean wandered over, holding something in his hand. "Grandma," he said, "I made this for you." It was a seashell with a googly eye glued to it and a wobbly smile drawn in marker. She took it like it was made of glass. "Thank you, sweetheart. It's Perfect. He smiled and gave her a hug before running off again. I let it happen. She stayed another hour, talked to Dean, asked about school, his drawings, his favorite part of the new house. Didn't push, didn't overstay. When she stood up to leave, her whole posture had shifted. Lighter, like she'd finally put something down she'd been carrying for too long. At the front door, she looked back at me. "Your son's going to be someone big someday," she said softly. "He already is," I replied. She nodded once, then walked out into the Florida sun, where the palms swayed and the air didn't carry judgment. A few days after Sharon flew back, Curtis called. It wasn't a desperate call this time, not a cry for cash or some half-baked pitch about reviving his brand. He just wanted to talk. "Hey," he said, voice calm but tight. "You got a minute?" I stepped out onto the patio, watching Dean float on his back in the pool like a little sea otter. "What's up?" He hesitated. Then, "How'd you do it, man?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted to hear where he was going with it. "I mean," he continued, "you were always quiet. Everyone thought you were struggling. But clearly, you weren't. So how? How'd you pull it off?" I sat down, kicked my feet up on the edge of the lounger. "By not pretending I was better than I was," I said. "I stayed low, worked hard, and didn't run my mouth." He was quiet for a second. "Yeah, that tracks. I didn't do it for recognition, Curtis. I did it so Dean could eat, so I could sleep at night. You want to build something? Start there." That was the first time he didn't argue, didn't deflect or crack a joke, just sat with it. We started talking once a week after that. Not deep talks, not dramatic, just check-ins, updates. He told me he picked up a job doing sales for a commercial roofing company. Not glamorous, but steady. He actually sounded proud of himself. I get up, drive to job sites, shake hands, book contracts, real money. "No bull," he said one afternoon. "It's kind of weird having structure again." "Yeah," I said. "It's underrated." He didn't ask for a dime, never brought up the past, just kept showing up. Meanwhile, Paul stayed silent. No texts, no calls, not even a snide comment through Sharon. For months, nothing. I didn't expect anything. Didn't need it. But the silence said more than his yelling ever did. He didn't know how to admit he'd been wrong. Then, out of nowhere, I got a text. It was late. Dean was already asleep, and I was sitting on the couch flipping through emails when my phone buzzed. It was a picture. Grainy. Looked like it was taken years ago. Dean was maybe 2 or 3, sitting on Paul's lap with chocolate smeared across his cheeks and a toy truck in his hands. Paul looked younger, less tired. Underneath the photo was one line. "Still got this on my desk. Wish I'd done better." I stared at it for a long time. Not because it fixed anything. It didn't. But because it was the first thing he'd ever sent me that sounded even halfway human. I didn't text back right away. Didn't thank him. I just let it sit. Next day, he followed up. "We'll be in Florida in February. Thought maybe we could meet. Just talk. If that's all right." I typed out a simple reply. "You can see Dean. One visit. On my terms." He replied with a thumbs up. That was it. It wasn't an apology, but it was movement. A shift. Enough to let me consider letting him through the door. I told Dean the truth. "Grandpa Paul wants to come visit when they're down here." Dean looked up from his sketchpad thinking. "Is he still mad at us?" "Number, I think he just wants to see you." "Okay," he said, "but only if he's nice." I smiled. That's the rule. For once, I wasn't looking for revenge. I didn't want them on their knees or begging. I just wanted the truth. I wanted to see if they could show up with respect and not expectation. It wasn't about building bridges anymore. Bridges lead both ways, and I wasn't about to meet them in the middle just because they had regrets. I was building boundaries. Clear, firm, non-negotiable. You want to see my son? Show up right. You want to talk to me? Speak like an equal. You want access to our life? Earn it. The days of bending over backward were done. Curtis kept calling, even told me about a promotion he was up for. Said the manager noticed his grit. I didn't tell him where the grit came from. He was figuring it out. Paul stayed quiet again. But I had a feeling something had shifted in him too. Maybe it was the health scare Sharon hinted at. Maybe it was seeing what life without our silence felt like. Maybe he finally realized that the man he thought was dragging the family down was the only one who'd ever carried it. Either way, he'd have to do more than send pictures if he wanted a real place in Dean's world. I didn't need to erase the past, but I damn sure wasn't going to repeat it. Curtis was trying. Paul was quiet, but present. But I stopped waiting on their next move. Naples gave me something better. I started building something real. People I didn't have to tiptoe around. Neighbors who waved and actually meant it. Co-workers at the shared office who invited me to grab tacos or hit the beach on weekends. Dads who didn't flinch when you said you were raising your kid alone. No pity, no measuring stick. Just real talk and shared coffee. We'd meet up for pickup basketball, park days, backyard BBQs where everyone brought chips and beer, and nobody asked what kind of car you drove. I stopped explaining myself. Stopped shrinking. Dean's birthday rolled around that spring. I expected a handful of classmates, some last-minute RSVPs. Instead, we had over 30 people in our backyard. 2 bounce houses, a Nerf war that nearly took out the garden, and a SpongeBob cake the size of a carry-on suitcase. Dean grinned so hard his cheeks hurt. His friends sang so loud it startled the neighbors, and I stood in the middle of it all, holding a soda and thinking, this is what family's supposed to feel like. More joy in that one afternoon than every Walker Christmas combined. That night, I sat at my desk after Dean passed out, still wearing his party crown. I pulled up the pitch deck I'd been working on and changed the title. Second Shot. I knew exactly what it was now. A non-profit built for guys like me. Single dads who got handed the short end and still showed up. We didn't need rescue. We needed resources, tools, brotherhood. A reminder that losing everything doesn't mean you're broken. It just means it's time to rebuild. I launched the site the next week. At first it was just a few clicks, a form, a mission statement. But within a month, I had emails from Texas, Ohio, Montana. One guy wrote, I found your story by accident. I was ready to quit. Then I saw how you kept going. You helped me show my son I wasn't broken. I read that one twice. Saved it in a folder. Replied personally. My phone started buzzing with DMS. My inbox filled with pictures of guys helping their kids with homework or moving into their first apartments post-divorce. Nobody needed a lecture. They needed proof that survival wasn't the end. It was the start of something stronger. Dean saw me working late one night and asked, Is that your job now? It's part of it, I said. You're helping dads? Trying to. He nodded, then slid his drawing across the desk. It was me, him, and our dog on a beach with a giant sun that had a face and sunglasses. We look happy, he said. We are. Back north, the calls slowed. The walkers weren't gone. They just hovered, circling. I got a card in the mail from Jennifer, Lexi's sister. Same thin handwriting I remembered from years ago, back when she'd glare at me across the table like I'd stolen her best friend. Inside it just said, I misjudged you. Sorry it took this long. No return address, no phone number, just that. I didn't trust it, but I didn't throw it out either. I tucked it in my desk drawer, under the folder where I kept the letters from dads I'd never met, but somehow understood me better than half my in-laws ever did. One night, Dean and I were walking back from the ice cream shop, him holding a dripping waffle cone, me holding the dog's leash. It was warm, humid, the kind of night where even the air felt soft. He looked up and said, Do we still have family? I stopped walking, looked down at him. Why do you ask that? I don't know, just wondering. Grandma came, and Uncle Curtis called, but it's not like before. No, I said, it's not. Is that bad? I shook my head. Not at all. He waited, eyes wide. We're building one, I told him. Brick by brick. The kind that chooses you, not controls you. He thought about that for a second, then nodded. I like that better. Me too. 6 months after that Thanksgiving mess, Paul and Sharon flew down to Naples for a weekend. Sharon had asked weeks in advance. Polite, careful. Paul didn't say much, but I knew he was coming. I let it happen, on my terms. They pulled up in a rental SUV like they were arriving at a resort. Sharon stepped out with a gift bag. Paul just nodded, clutching a baseball cap like he wasn't sure if he was welcome. Dean was already out back with his bucket and shovel. I watched from the upstairs terrace while Paul knelt beside him in the sand. His knees cracked. His hands fumbled. The sandcastle collapsed twice. Dean didn't care. Paul didn't yell. He just tried again. No barking orders. No judgment. Just effort. Honest, awkward effort. Later that night, after Dean fell asleep watching Home Alone, Paul found me in the kitchen. He stood by the fridge for a second, looking at the magnets like he wasn't sure what to say. I owe you an apology, he finally said. For years, I thought you were weak. I thought Lexi left because you couldn't handle her. I thought you stayed broke because you didn't try. He looked me straight in the eye. Turns out you're the strongest one of us. I didn't gloat, didn't rub it in. I just nodded. He took a breath. We want to be part of his life, whatever that looks like, if you'll let us. I leaned back against the counter. Start by showing up, I said. The right way. That's it. That's the bar. He nodded again. Understood. That was all I needed to hear. Christmas came early that year. Palm trees wrapped in string lights, surfboards propped by the front door with red bows. Dean helped me hang stockings on the patio railing and left cookies out next to a cup of orange juice, because milk gets gross in Florida. One afternoon, I found a piece of paper stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a slice of pizza. It was Dean's school essay, written in crooked handwriting with a blue pen that kept smudging. My dad's a superhero, but he doesn't wear a cape. He just never gave up. Next to it was a crayon drawing of our dog wearing sunglasses and chasing seagulls, and a grocery list that just said eggs, apples, chips, maybe donuts. I didn't touch any of it, just stood there staring. That was the kitchen I built, in the life I earned. For the kid I'd do it all over again for. Family isn't who you're born with. It's who shows up when it counts. And this time, I wasn't hiding. Not my life. Not my worth. Not my son. We're not part of their story anymore. They're part of ours, if they can earn it. What would you have done if your in-laws treated your kid like that? Drop your answer in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.